To continue with our education program, it's my privilege to introduce Mike Wittenstein. Mike leads Story Miners, a leading customer experience and service design constituency based in Atlanta that works worldwide with retailers and other service brands. Mike has had the pleasure of working with and learning from Best Buy, Party City, Kinko's, McDonald's, IBM, Holiday Inn, Wingate Inns, and many other game-changing brands. Mike found his passion for customer experience and service design at IBM, where as eVisionary, he founded the company's first experience design practice in 1999. He's a true innovator in this industry, in this area. Since then, he has been helping owners and leadership teams focus on the human element in addition to the bottom line. So far, he and his clients' efforts have totaled more than $1.5 billion in measurable impact. He is a founding member of the Consumer Experience Professionals Association and is ranked as one of the top influencers in the field by and by. With 25 years' experience in 25 countries and with over 400 firms, Mike doesn't just run the firm. He enjoys working side by side with his clients and their teams as an experienced designer, a consultant, a coach, and to our benefit, and as a speaker. Mike attended Thunderbird for advanced business degree and the University of Florida as an undergraduate. He studied in Brazil and the former Soviet Union, and he speaks 4 languages, including rent-to-own. Please welcome APRO's 2014 keynote speaker, Mike Wittenstein. Mike, come on up.
Thank you. Nice watch. Good morning, everyone. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here. I've had a chance over the last month and a half to visit a number of stores in a couple of states, to talk with about a dozen people, talk with a number of your clients, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. The last 50 years have been amazing, I've heard, and I wanted to wish you guys a happy birthday. But we stand right now at a crossroads. You heard that from some of the previous speakers. I think Jim and Patty have talked about that. You might consider it in the crosshairs, not just at the crossroads, because customers are changing very, very quickly how they shop, what they want, and how they like to be served by retailers. It's been said by a few of the industry pundits that people don't go shopping anymore. They're shopping all the time. They're shopping on their phones. They're shopping at home. They're bombarded by advertisements. There's new augmented reality technology that lets you point your phone from the outside of a window and let the retailer know that you're interested in that product, add you to their list, or you can buy the product right from there. The time and place factors of retail aren't quite as relevant as they used to be a long time ago. Customers are looking for different things. Today, what I'm going to try to do is give you a look at what I saw as a customer experience designer. Now, my job is to pay attention to all the little details, the little things that you do that make a big difference to the customers. I'm going to give you an honest appraisal of how that came across to me. Now, honestly, I only visited 6 stores, 7 stores, spent a number of hours online, a few hours on the phone, many of that on hold. And I'll give you a sense of what that made me feel, and then what I think you might be able to do about it. So think about me as your doctor. I'm going to do a diagnosis, and then I'm going to get happy, and we'll do a little bit of a prescription. I was thinking about what could this industry make as a bigger, better promise to its clients. Think about that. Brands make promises to their clients, and it's the job of the business part of your operation to keep those promises. The reason I thought about this idea of in 2020, people shop rent-to-own first, is because I saw an advertisement from Groupon. I don't know if many of you have seen that before, but you know, Groupon sends you those ads, and it's like 50 or 60 or 85% off to try this new vendor type of a thing. Well, a lot of the companies that went along with Groupon didn't do so well. But they're still in the trenches, and they've come out with a new way to position their service, which I think is very interesting. They're saying shop Groupon first. And the advertisements are showing luxury goods, fun things like skydiving. So those little extra things that you do to treat yourself are what Groupon's positioning itself around. So all of their ads right now, and you should look them up, are about doing really fun things. So instead of waiting for a fun thing to come to you, which was their old model, now they're repositioning themselves and saying, shop us first when you want to have a good time cheap. Kind of makes sense. So now you've got one place to go for a motorboat rental, spa treatment, a special trip that you'd like to take. All these things that were too hard to advertise as individual categories can now all be done in one place from one site. And because of their model, everything is localized, and you can shop by price and whatever else you like. At the top end of the spectrum, Ritz-Carlton is doing exactly the same thing. Now, some of you guys run big enterprises. You might stay at the Ritz-Carlton, but the most loyal Ritz customers, when they go on vacation, they pick a city that has a Ritz in it first, and then they decide what they want to do on vacation. That's loyalty. That's looking at things very differently. So my question to you as I speak for the next 50 or so minutes is, how can we make the rent-to-own industry the one that people want to shop first? What do we have to change? What do we have to say differently to customers? What service do we have to deliver differently? And how do we have to change things on the back end? I'll give you some ideas as we move along. When you change your promise, hopefully, you're giving people more of what they want. You're more in tune with their new needs. Now, we know that customers have changed tremendously over the last 5 years. I was reminded of a story by a speaker colleague friend of mine that it took the trade unions 150 years to get us down to a 40-hour work week. You know, some of your parents or grandparents probably worked in the unions, and they worked hard for their rights. Well, it took the smartphone 5 years to just obliterate that. Now we're all working 24/7. With that, customers' needs change as well. So when you change the front-end promise, you have to change the back end, the way the business operates as well. Some of what customers want from you is different than what you're giving them right now. And you might think, you know, we've had 50 years of success. But what I want you to think about today is, well, what really could I change? What would the impact be on the back end of my business, that hard to change part? If you're able to increase the aperture for change, your business can get amazingly healthier. Let's take a look at some specifics. Finding that balance is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So I've done some homework. I printed it all out, and I have this big notebook. It's about 2 inches thick. I read market research reports. I looked at customer interviews. There was demographic analyses. There were some business plans, all that kind of stuff. I got a sense of how big is the industry, what are the legislative issues, and so on. So from an academic perspective, I'm kind of up to speed. I also did some other things. I went out into the field undercover. I came up with a few scenarios, and I pulled into some stores, and I played out a couple of different scenarios. I told them that I had friends moving in from out of town. I told somebody else a different story that, you know, my daughter won some prize, so we're going to redecorate her room, and on and on. I tried to rent a computer as well. I tried to do some real practical things. And I did that in all the different channels. I started off online. I did searches not only for the things that I wanted and for the store names that I knew, I also did it for categories and for situations that I found myself in. I'm going to give you one of the things that I learned about the industry is that it's very hard to find rent-to-own. Give you an example. When you're looking for a plumber, what's the most frequently used search term? It's not plumber, it's leaky faucet or clogged toilet or something like that. So when I used the words that described the situation that I was in, I got almost nothing from the rent-to-own industry. I got lots from other specialty rental goods. So that's one of the little details that we picked up. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I also took a look at what it's like to shop by phone. I spent 4 minutes waiting to talk to one person, and another 2 transfers later, I didn't get an answer and was promised a call back, which came 2 days later. That's not so good. That happened a couple of times with some different numbers. I took a look at what it's like to go into the stores themselves. I went into a half a dozen, 7 stores. I went into 2 different states. I had different scenarios in each one, and I paid careful attention to everything that I saw, from the signage to the first impression, like you heard Patty talk about, the way the employees treated me, like you heard Jim talk about, and I got a feeling for what the whole place looked like. So I'd like to share some impressions with you about that. You know what I did now. This is the tough love part, okay? So just like the last speaker said, don't hate me for asking money, okay? Don't hate me for the things that I'm going to tell you right now, but I'm giving you a very honest appraisal as an experienced designer of how the industry's coming across, given my very limited experience, and we'll talk about that. So it's time for some truths. First thing, this is a really hard to find business. You can't be hard to find in today's economy or you'll be irrelevant. Hard to find for me meant it was really hard to find you online. I looked for things, I looked for situations, I looked for places, I looked at Google Maps. I couldn't find places. I could find some, but I got a whole bunch of different categories when I did my search. There's a real big difference between the word rent and lease and interim and all those things, and we've got to get all that stuff sorted out. It's also very hard to find the physical stores. They're nestled away. They're way back from the front of the streets. The signs sometimes are kind of old. The paint on the buildings isn't fresh, so it just kind of fades into the background. The address that I got on the website sometimes wouldn't work in my GPS. That's an easy fix. Just go to google.com, grab your account, move your little map thing over, and they'll take care of it for you. It's super easy, but make sure that that matches. So it's hard to find. While it's hard to find, the more important thing is we've already made it difficult for customers. Imagine you're going to a new doctor in a new city. You moved in, you go on the website, you have a great telephone call, you've got your appointment, and you can't find the doctor. You start feeling what? Frustrated. Exactly. So there's a frustration building right from the beginning. The next thing I noticed online, on the phone, and in the stores, particularly in the stores, was that things are very, very old. In one of the stores I went to, it still had VCRs painted on the wall. Somebody needs to erase that. Get a can of paint, take that down. DVDs. Okay? People aren't interested so much in the products as they are in the use of the products for them. The old part is really, really important. You've been in the business a long time. It's a business of margins. It's all about customer relationships. But the people who are shopping your stores, as low income or disadvantaged as they may be, are also shopping at the Apple Store. They're also treating themselves to some real special shoes at Nordstrom's. They're going not just to outlet stores, they're shopping everywhere. And online, they don't dream at the really small, old, unsophisticated sites. They dream with the best. They get the best apps. They have the latest technology. And then they walk into a really old, sometimes dingy, carpet tiles don't match, stains, ceiling tiles don't match, lights out, big lighting over here, but there's nothing on the wall, no signage, old brick, old finishings and furnishings. It's not very appealing, given all the other things that there are in retail to do. So sorry for the tough love, but I want you to know that that is an issue for the new customers that you're trying to attract. One of the research reports I read said that you've got about 4.5 million customers right now, but a market potential of about 45. That's like 15 to 18% of the US population. What that tells me is that this idea of, let's call it interim ownership rather than rent to own, interim ownership has much broader appeal for a wider number of people than we're currently addressing. Now, I've heard that there are some people that are doing that with new products and services. The other impression that I got, and this one felt like buying a car, was that most of the conversation was about my money, not about me. In 6 store visits, one person walked over, introduced themselves, and shook my hand and started talking to me. 1 out of 6. On the websites, and particularly on the telephone, the first words that I heard within the first 30 seconds had the word contract in it. I'm just starting out and you're talking to me about contracts. It feels like a really hard sell. Another person asked me, well, about how much do you want to spend? You can't go into a retail location and categorize people by price and then expect to serve them really well. You can do that. It makes a lot of sense from a seller's perspective, but from a buyer's perspective, it feels like you're getting, the old refrigerator salesman look. They walk into an old-fashioned Sears and they look at your shoes, they look at your watch, and then they look at you, and they may or may not smile based on how well-heeled they think you are. So I felt like I was being scoped out for my wallet as opposed to being served. So one of the new rules of retail is to serve before you sell. But in this business, there's a lot of selling going on before serving. One more thing is about the waiting. There was a huge, huge amount of waiting that I had to do. In a couple of the telephone interactions I had, I spent more time on hold than I did with somebody. When I went into several stores, I had to wait 3 or 4 minutes before being greeted. Now, I could see on the floor there were a couple people, and they were busy with other customers and doing other things, but I'd see people walk out and go around and walk in the back, and some other big guy, obviously a delivery guy, come out and do something and off, and I felt kind of ignored. Because you've got plenty of people there, but I'm not being acknowledged. At least acknowledge people when they walk in the door. Now, I know everybody knows that. I'm just repeating it as part of my report here to set the groundwork for how things are coming across. The time between steps was also very long. When I did my telephone calls, it took hours. That was okay. But when it took 2 days, and then I finally called back to get somebody, and I'm so sorry, and then I had to wait again several hours to get a call from somebody else. That's wasting everybody's time. It frustrates the customers, even if they are low income. It's very hard for them to do that. I felt like I was in a place of last resort. It didn't make me feel very good, and it doesn't make me feel good sharing that with you, but it's the best thing I have to describe. A last resort. I can't shop anywhere else. I have to be here. Nobody wants to buy in that kind of environment. So, last resort, instead of first choice, how can we make somebody who's on a limited income, perhaps, or someone who needs to purchase without affecting their credit rating, how can we make them feel like this is a first choice? That's a question for you. How can we make it like the very second slide in 2020? How can we make rent-to-own the first place people want to go? I don't have the full answer for that, but I'm going to give you a few ideas as we go along. But that's your challenge to solve for the rest of the 40 minutes or so that we have left. So here's how it made me feel. When I work as a customer experience designer, one of the tools of my trade is emotion. Everybody, when they shop, has emotions. Each one of you runs your day on emotions. You make decisions based on emotion. All things being equal, you buy from the vendor that you like the most. Emotions are key. They're part of your promise. They're part of how you deliver value to your own customers, because they like to get that emotion back. They like that affirmation. When you buy a ticket to a movie, you're paying to have your emotions manipulated. The excitement of the new Spider-Man, or the Bridges of Madison County that makes you cry, or The Diary, whatever your film preference is, you're experiencing those emotions and you're paying for it. A big part of what you do is how you make your customers feel. So this is what I felt. And again, I'm a guy, over 50, like a lot of folks here, but here's what I felt like. First thing was just like a number. Here's this guy, a modern version of a Dilbert, sitting in a cube. Just take a number, we'll get to you when we have a second. You're just a contract to us. The clues for getting that feeling were being not recognized, being asked about money before being asked about me, and being sold rather than given a buying experience. Didn't make me feel too good to feel like a number. It's just people don't like that. I was very frustrated. I had a really hard time, and I'm a smart guy, I had a hard time understanding what clerks were telling me when they said, yeah, you can rent that. And then I said, well, can I get the computer for just a couple of months? No, I don't really want to do that. It's a lease contract. Well, you said rent to own. Well, yeah, you can rent it to own. I was already very confused. I was frustrated. I couldn't get the websites to work. I couldn't find the addresses. The people weren't treating me the way I liked. I was angry. I don't usually get angry, but this business, again, I'm just the messenger, don't shoot me. It made me feel angry. That's not the kind of emotion you can let your customers feel. If I'm feeling it, and I'm just a guy, a lot of women who are much more emotionally in tune have got to be feeling it as well. So it can be a point of competition for you. I was very confused. When I walked into a store, there are certain things I expect to see. I expect to get a first impression so that I can find my way. Stores that do that are like Apple Computer, even Penny's and Sears with all the signs. But when I walked into several stores, granted some of these were rather dated, there was a big line painted around the circumference of the room, and it had product categories on it, but underneath it were different things. So it said refrigerators, and there are the sofas. And se habla español, es muy difícil entender eso. Okay? If you speak another language, you're like super confused. All right? And people come over to you and they're smiling and shaking your hand, and then a friend of theirs calls them away, and they have to go over there and they leave you hanging. Well, wait a second. I thought I was going to work with you. No, someone will be with you in just a minute. How does this place work? It's very confusing. So again, these emotions were, in my case, rather negative, and it's great that I'm able to present that to you because your customers probably won't tell you. They won't walk up to the counter and share this with you. So I'm doing that so we can do something about it. I was also very skeptical. Now, when you're in a buying mode, you start off kind of aware. You want to learn something. And then you ask a few questions. You say, I'm going to consider this a little bit more. And then you get ready to buy. Then you use the product, and you might tell your friends about it. But in that space in between just becoming aware that rent-to-own was an option and learning more about it, I was getting pretty skeptical. I saw some behaviors and I witnessed some things. You know how our minds fill in the gaps all the time? I was wondering what kind of business I was in. Why am I paying like 3 or 4 times the price of something and being told it's almost the same? There was some very clever, slick talk. And it was very clever and slick, and it was mostly the guys that did it, but it really made me think twice about even working or even continuing to buy in this industry. That, in my opinion, has to change. There's got to be, going back to the first thing I said, a new promise for the rent-to-own business. Right now, the promise is rent-to-own. My personal opinion is people are interested in interim ownership. Not everyone, but if you adjust your promise, if you think about the people who want to own for a short amount of time, rather than sell them the full length of a contract, knowing that 75% of them are going to cancel out, and that's how the breakage is how you make a lot of the money, it'll change everything. The model needs some revision. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm not saying it's broken, but there are a lot of people out there who might not want that exact model all the time. I think if you stick only with that, you're going to be missing that other 90% of the market, of the 45 million people that the market research says are out there. Case in point, and then we'll move on, there's been a huge pickup in rental goods in the last 5 years, particularly at the ultra high end. Women can rent Gucci handbags. You can get rings, Harry Winston jewelry. You can rent a boat. You can rent an entire facade of a fancy life, all online, all with a mobile app. And more, some of the most sophisticated, high-earning individuals are doing just that. There's almost a scourge of ownership at the top end. People want to keep their lives super simple. They don't want to own stuff. They want to have the right to use and show off their stuff when and where they need it. So what used to be products are now being seen as services. And the people who can afford it want what they want. And what they want is often a little bit higher up in terms of quality, a little more information, and a little bit easier to get at. So there are three things that I'd like to suggest in terms of a prescription. By the way, can I get how am I doing here? How's everybody feeling about what I'm saying so far? You're what?
We're so excited.
Are you believing what I'm saying? Okay. Is this a good time a good time in the history of the organization to address this stuff? All right. Can I keep going? Okay. I haven't felt any tomatoes yet. All right. When I work as an experience designer, I bring several things to the table. A designer's point of view is not like what color should things be and what's the texture of the walls and what's the merchandise mix, not that kind of design. I mean classical problem solving like architecture. Architecture was the first, let's call it design science. Architecture is all about solving big problems for communities, for businesses, for even larger environments like nations. You know, our Washington, D.C. was founded on design principles. Before the first drawings were made and before the first buildings were done, they talked about the form of government and what people were going to need to do, the kind of conversations they had, what they wanted visitors to do when they came to the Capitol. They thought about all those things and they designed the city around those principles. I.M. Pei is a real famous architect with lots of buildings. I'm sure, Debbie, that you've studied him as well. And I read in his work that he designs the space around the activity that's going to happen inside of it. So as an experience designer, I look at what does that activity have to be like so that the customer's treated extremely well, they get what they want, but also so that the employees can be engaged authentically while they're doing it. They have to have a sense of pride. They have to care. If they do, it rolls right over to the customers. They feel that care and concern. And the same thing for the business owner. You can't have a la-di-da, happy, happy, smiley kind of a business that's losing $50,000 a month. It's not sustainable. Design is so cool because it's a way of thinking that lets everybody get more of what they want. And what's so weird about America in general, I speak all over the world, but here in America, we're subject to this invisible, linear thinking. Does that make sense? You've probably heard the expression, a fish doesn't know it swims in water. It's not aware of its environment. It just is. Well, in America, we tend to think, plod, 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 everything goes in a line. I've got to make this number. I have to do these behaviors, so I have to do these things to my employees and these things to my customers. The reality is, you can make your business any way you want it to be. And when at the very beginning we talked about possibly being in the crosshairs, I think what we need to do is take that rifle target and move it away from the business and put it right on your customers so that you can get super focused on exactly what it is they want and build your business model to serve them, the employees, and you guys. So number one is raise your game. We're going to talk about that in detail. Raising your game is about taking ownership and responsibility for making this industry better. You've had some people here that have been working at APRO, I've heard, for 17, 25, 26, 28 years. It's absolutely amazing. You've got so much goodness in the industry. And I see some gray hair. I'm getting my own fair share of that as well. All cool. It's time to think about what's the next generation of this business going to be? What's the next 50 years going to be like? So I'm challenging you today to make the next 50 years more exciting, better, more profitable, more relevant than the last 50. It's a logical progression. The second thing, refresh the business model. Refresh doesn't mean throw away, and it doesn't mean remodel. Refresh means bring it to life again. Remember, in the 50s, people got their first exposure to all this consumerism. The troops were coming back, they were growing their families. There was this whole excitement around the kitchen of the future. Remember going to Disney World and the Carousel of Progress and all that stuff? It was a really exciting time as we were reinventing the way we live, work, and play. And that's happening right now as well. So it's time to revise the business model. Can I see my, there we go. The last thing I want to share with you is it's a concept that I've been using successfully ever since I worked at IBM. It's the idea of anticipation. Anticipation doesn't necessarily mean like getting nervous that you're going to speak in front of an audience, or you're about to get married, or your first kiss, or something like that. Anticipation is simply knowing sooner what your customers need and providing it for them. If you can anticipate their needs, they're going to feel like, oh my gosh, I got the best service in the world here. You know, you go to a nice restaurant, and you're getting thirsty, and you're just about to take a drink, and the guy's coming over to pour your water. That's wonderful. So that's what I mean by anticipation. If we get good at anticipating our customers' needs, it will inform the way we design our business. All right, so a lot of change going on. Change is, I heard a good definition of it. I was at a conference last week in Atlanta, and the lady who runs the #1 library in the country in Columbus, Ohio, said, as she was talking about all of her working to get this library better, change happens one retirement at a time. That's not, I'm not saying that to you guys, I'm just reporting what she said. Change is very slow because people have grown up their entire lives believing that what they've got is the result of their good, hard effort. That's what it's all about. But each of you in this room is going to have to take on the mantle of change and change yourself in front of your employees and your managers. If they see you changing the way you work and the way you're wired, that'll give them the best possible example and make it easier for them as well. So the trick is achieving more than one outcome at the same time. And the way to do that is to stand in your customer's shoes. Now, literally what that means is instead of looking at your customers through the two-way glass or from behind the counter, walk out in front of the business, go outside, look your place up on your mobile phone, drive up, see how easy is it to get in, to park, look at the first impression you get of your building, walk in, just stop for a second, taking a breath, taking a deep breath, because some of these places don't smell so good, okay? And see what you see. Can you orient yourself? Can you find what you're looking for? Do you get a really warm greeting? Look at it from your customer's perspective. We're going to do an exercise about that so you can see exactly what I mean. Customer experience is everything you do, your brand does for your customers. It's the good stuff. It's the mint on the pillow. Here at the hotel that, you know, they fold the toilet paper over to let you know the maid's been there. That's a clue. That's a nice little thing they do for us. Last night, I wanted some water, and there wasn't any out, so I asked one of the wait staff, where's the water? She said, it'll be here in a few minutes, just check on the table. 4 minutes later, she comes over with a glass of water. That was nice. She was doing things for me. Our business processes do things to our customers. We make them wait. We make them enter information 5 times. It happens to you when you call your cable company and they make you enter your code and push buttons, and they always say, please listen to all of our choices as our menu options have changed. No, they haven't. You're just wasting my time. So we do things to our customers. So the for side and the to side and how it makes them feel, that's the definition of customer experience. Each of you is responsible for managing all 3 parts of that at the same time, because that's how your customers are going to see it. One of the companies that really gets this customer experience thing is Apple Computer. How many folks have been to an Apple store before? Okay. Was it pretty cool? Yeah? No?
No, I don't like going to Apple.
What don't you like about Apple?
Overwhelming. There's too many people and there's too much staff. You gotta write your name on a list and it takes 30 minutes and then you gotta go back. But that's just.
Do you know about the Apple Store app? What?
I said, yeah, you can like go home and put your name in it and then you wait your time and then you go in and then there's somebody there.
Okay. It's not for everyone. Yeah, it's a little overwhelming. Okay. Everybody likes something a little bit different, and Apple's losing a little bit of the polish off of its apple, that's for sure. The Apple Store app lets you schedule an appointment with a salesperson for 55 minutes on the hour. Pretty cool. So when you have an appointment, if you walk in without an appointment, you kind of have to wait. But the people who have an appointment get that service right away. Here are a couple things that Apple does that you might consider in your business. Now, it's not a direct translation, but just let your mind go free for a second and think about what could you do better in your stores with your customers and your employees. But imagine the technology can be different and your leadership style can be a little bit different. Apple checks customers in when they walk in the front door. So that same thing that you said about giving them your name and waiting in line, what's happening behind the scenes is they're using technology to queue up who's the next best person to help you. They know how many people are in the store, how many are there for technical support, for training, for sales. They have video monitors that tell them the count of all the warm bodies in the store. They know the average time somebody spends in the store, given their intent. So they do their best to capture that intent and route you the right way. When the store is not so busy, they'll actually take you over to the person who can help you out. In essence, what Apple did with its store design, and this was a mandate from Steve Jobs, who was the big muscle behind it, is they wrap the resources of the store around the customer. The customer is not a pinball. The store is more like a custom-fit suit for them. And it works out really, really well for them because they've gone from one store to like 425 stores in 12 years. Each of their stores does about $100 million. Their inventory turns are 5. Pretty good, huh? That's by month. 5 per month. 60 turns a year is what they do. And when Steve Jobs was alive, they considered the store their primary selling channel, and the website was just to take care of the overflow. They wanted people to have the experience because they wanted people to touch their products. They brought in that iPhone thing, the iPod thing. They've invented a half a dozen new industries, and people had to have the experience of touching and feeling the product so that they could evangelize for everyone else. That's what made the whole thing work for their business. The next thing they introduced was a Genius Bar. You all know that's where you can go for tech support, and they put their smartest people on the front line. Unlike the Radio Shacks and the Best Buys until recently, they would put their least expensive people on the front line because it was so costly to provide that service. But Apple changed the rules of the game, and a lot of folks are following, like Geek Squad and some of the Apple knockoffs in China. It's all this way as well. But they put their smartest people up front because they make the best impression. They also are better at solving problems faster so that they don't go to have to do support. They don't have to call the call center 2, 3, 4 times, and they don't walk across the hall at the mall to the Microsoft store. So they did very well with that. Customer experience is one of the tools that you can use. Service design is another. When you look at a problem from the customer's perspective, you get a chance to see what they want and what the business can do. It's not about who's right. You've got to leave all that stuff behind you when you're looking at this. When you go back to your stores and you're looking at them next week, leave all the baggage behind and see how can you make it better for customers. Not the how part, but what would it look like if you could. You're going to walk across the hall into the convention center and see the Vision store. You'll see some ideas there that'll probably really grab you. So suspend your disbelief and don't worry about how to get it done. Just figure out what do customers want most. Service design is another tool. You've all heard of product design. You know, this product was made by some engineers who figured out the specs and the weight and how to keep me safe from getting electrocuted, how to get it to communicate to the station in the back. That's all product design. Product design is pretty cool. The whole world is made by engineers. All the products we use, the roads we drive on, the glasses we use to drink, everything has been engineered. But until recently, the services that we offer haven't been engineered. They lack that discipline. They're not put together on purpose. Most of the services running American retail today are grandfather's generation thinking. Mr. Macy is in retailers' brains right now. And he said, stack them high and sell them low. Or he said, make sure the customer gets everything they want. Whatever he said, he passed on to the next generation. And without having the insight that R.H. Macy did, they passed it on to the next generation. But these guys started to have computers, and they started to have faster trucks, and they have fax machines. Then these guys have internet and mobile apps and cloud computing and all this other fun stuff, augmented reality, digital displays, and they're still thinking like Macy. And that's not right. Service design focuses on the customer and the employees and the needs of the business to better engineer the way services work. So when you hear the word customer experience and service design, pick up your ear. Start reading more about those things. There are thousands of articles on the internet, and they'll help you to balance out the discussion. I want to tell you 2 quick stories about how these disciplines come together. You know Progressive Insurance and Flo. Flo, by the way, is a comedian named Stephanie Courtney. It's a little factoid for the day. In the Progressive ads, they tell you that they will shop the competition and give you the best price, right? You've seen that? And that's a pretty bold statement. Could you do that in your stores? You've got a chair for $200. Could you show them where they can get that chair wholesale? Or on Amazon? Or at the closest location to you for half of that? Would you do that? Absolutely? Okay. And did. Does it work?
Yeah, very well.
Cool.
Always complimented the competition.
Would you tell them without them asking you?
What's that?
Would you tell them without them asking you? Would you volunteer that information?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. Progressive gets all the advantage of offering and volunteering that information, but without the cost. You know, insurance is a risk-managed business. So when you come in and you fill out your 15-minute form or whatever it is, or 7.5 minutes now with Esurance, they learn a lot about you, and very quickly they can find out what some of your loss history has been. If they want you as a customer because you're a really good risk and you fit their profile, they price their insurance lower than the competition. If they don't want you, they'll price their stuff higher than the competition. Did you never know that? Interesting. So they're giving you this transparency about price, and they're doing real-time pricing at the same time. So it feels like you're getting a really, really cool deal, and if you're in the right category, you do. Google does the same thing with advertising. So that's one example of how changing the service design changes the promise and changes the back end. This other one is about a hospital stay that I had in, the popsicle. So I went to the hospital for a procedure, and smart guy, pretty healthy, going to the hospital for this thing, and the nurse comes in and says, "Hi, Mr. Wittenstein, I'm Sherry, I'll be your nurse." Great. I felt like I was at a table where the waiter gives you instructions on like, I'm going to serve you and then take your order and then I'll be back with your food. Like, I've already heard that, I don't need to know that again. So she asked me, "Is there anything I can do for you?" I said, "No, I'm fine, thanks for all the information." And I had my computer, I was ready to go to work. And she said, "No, Mr. Wittenstein, is there anything I can do for you?" No. And then she said, "It's okay, I have the time." I said, "Whoa, okay. Sherry, I really can't think of a thing." And she said, "Mr. Wittenstein, would you like a popsicle?" I'm 50 years old, okay? "Do you have grape?" So I got a grape popsicle. That was really cool. And the rest of the story is this. Every hour, when somebody came in, an orderly, a phlebotomist, the doctor, another nurse, they said, "Can I get you anything?" before they left the room. Every hour. And I thought, there's something going on here. So as I was walking around in my, embarrassing little gown thing, don't think about that too much, I saw a door that said nurse floor manager. So I knocked on the door, and I just had a quick conversation with her. I said, "What's the deal? Why is everybody asking me this?" And she says, "We found out from doing our customer research and some operations research, customer experience and service design together, that if we ask our patients about every hour if there's anything they can get while somebody's already in the room, they click the little button 37% less. That is a huge efficiency savings. It saves them labor, and it also keeps the nurses from feeling like their electronic choke collar is getting pulled every time somebody pushes the button. So it calms the whole place down. It's better health, it's better efficiency, and all of that. And that came from service design and customer experience. Patients want their stuff right now, regardless of how small it is, and nurses want to be interrupted as little as possible. Hospitals want the highest satisfaction scores. So those two things reliably work. You get lower effort and higher profit. So let's talk about raising your game. How do you go about raising your game? What are some of the things that you can do to do that? First, and this isn't the first time you've heard me say this, stand in your customer's shoes. Look at your business, look at your industry from your customer's point of view. I'm willing to bet that a lot of the things I said in the first difficult half of this presentation are some of the same things you're going to hear. You have to please be willing to talk about that with your managers first, and then when they're on board with your staff. If you demonstrate that openness and awareness that there's an issue, there's an elephant in the room, a dead moose on the table, whatever your expression is, others will start to bring more details to you. And you want to hear the bad news. You want to hear it so that you can fix it. So on your tables, there are two forms. One of them looks like this. This is your Clues Field Journal. And each of you should have one of these. And you should have a couple of the pages that look like this. Notice, I'd like you to do a quick exercise. You can take this home with you, and we can send you more pages if you like. It's not, it can be used for any business at all. And let's focus on this page right here. On the top left, it asks you where you are. So when you go out and look at your business or a competitor or the case study that I'm going to give you in just a couple of minutes, you just click on where is it, in the store, online, something like that. And then on the bottom left, it's asking you to describe a clue. A clue is a little thing that you notice. It can be human, like a nice behavior or a greeting. It can be informational, like maps and directions, time the store is open, a sign on the wall. Or it can be environmental. The ceiling tiles that don't match, the wonderful ambient lighting, the great sound, all those kinds of things. So it can be any of those three things. And it can be an existing clue, or you can write down something that pops into your head that you think that would be cool. And then you would mark it down under a new clue. So I'm going to show you a picture of what I call the dirty dry cleaner, and I'm going to ask you to start identifying what some of the issues are. And then we'll do a quick report out. This is a 3-minute exercise. Take a look at this. You're dropping your clothes off, you're in a new neighborhood, and here's a girl apparently doing her nails. It's messy. What else do you see? Talk about it in your tables for a second. I'm going to walk around. We'll do this for about 2.5 more minutes, and then we'll do a quick report out. Great. Yeah. Okay.
I always did like a man in a uniform, and that one fits you grand. Why don't you come up sometime, see me? I'm home every evening. Come up, I'll tell you a fortune.
1, 2. Oh, you can hear me now. Good. Hey guys, let me have your attention up at the front, please. I originally wanted to do a report out, but it seems that we're pushing on time a little bit. I'm going to hang out for a couple of hours, so please find me. We'll talk about some of the ideas and everything. But just real quickly, would 1 or 2 people shout out the worst thing they saw, and then a couple people the best thing they saw? We have like 10 seconds per answer, so just say what it is without a lot of description. Worst things. No separation between the front and the back. Laundry on the counter. Messy implies disorganization. You're at a laundry. Why would things be dirty? I don't get it. Good things. What is an example of a new clue that would make the business better? Anybody? Better signage. Maybe a mobile app so they could walk the stuff out to you at the curb so you don't even have to come in. All kinds of things you could change. All right. We're going to go into hyperspeed. Okay, here are a couple of thought starters for you. To raise your game, got to be easier to find. There's a phrase out there called SOLO-MO. Social, local, mobile. It's more for the online advertising industry, but it fits you guys like a hand in a glove. Socially, you've got to be there. Your customers should be the ones telling your story more than anybody else because you gave them such an amazing experience that they can't wait to share it with their friends. I just heard from the folks at APRO that they're doing some amazing work in keywording. So finding all those, clogged toilet, leaky faucet kind of things should be a time in that shouldn't be a problem for you guys soon. That's a great opportunity for you to pool your efforts. You got to freshen up the inside of your stores. I almost brought a tie-dye shirt and some Birkenstocks to walk on stage to make the point that I felt like I was in the 70s. You got to get caught up. And my suggestion is you make an even more radical renovation than that you look out at 2020, 2030, and you think about how you're going to come across. What's the size of your store going to be? It doesn't have to be big anymore. It doesn't have to be a warehouse in cheap-to-rent space. You can use really cool displays and centralize your warehousing, as I've heard about. You've got to upgrade the rent-to-own story. Personally, now this isn't an industry opinion, it's just my opinion, based on what I've been paying attention to, I think a lot of people are looking for interim ownership. They want all the benefits of ownership, and they want to be able to return it after a few months. 5 times out of 6, I was shunned from committing to a 2-month purchase. I wanted to do a laptop for 2 months, I wanted to do furniture for 3 months, nobody would write my business. I was strongly encouraged to lease to own, rent to own. And I asked more questions, and it got kind of fuzzy there. You got to add some technology. Tablets in the stores that can tell stories about each of your items. There's some really cool stuff you can do by just holding up the tablet, looking at an item, and seeing it in 3D or getting all the different product information about it. So you can fix your signage problem with a tablet or even with a mobile phone. Augmented reality is one of the things to look at. Make deciding even easier. Even though some of the stuff that's sold in the stores isn't what you'd call a considered purchase, it's not quite a fast-moving consumer good, treat it like a considered decision and think about how to make the decision to get it easier for your customers. That means you're going to have to stand in their shoes to do that. If some of you want to ask me about that later, I'll give you a couple of ideas. Use the experience as the coordination point for everything. To refresh the business model, I encourage you to start with a blank piece of paper. What business do we want to be in? Now, don't let all your employees in on that because they'll think you're like losing it. So you have a private meeting, get a couple of your staff together. Maybe some of the owners and managers can get together off-site because you don't compete with each other, often geographically. Share some of those ideas and see what you come up with. Starting again with a focus on this one thing. What are the needs your customers have that aren't yet being met by you or by anybody else? The first guy that taught me this lesson was the then president of Sony when he introduced that big, bulky tape recorder called a Walkman. He put his career on the line to bring that product to market. His colleagues said, "You're an idiot. You'll lose your job. You'll lose face. Even worse than your job and your money is to lose face in Japan." But he stuck with it because he believed that customers wanted to listen to music wherever they were. Steve Jobs did him one better with the introduction of the iPod by letting people listen to whatever music they wanted to in whatever order. Remember, it used to be you had to listen to the album, Carole King, same songs, all the time, same order. Now you can create playlists. You've got total freedom. Take a look at this. Corning is in the business of making glass. Glass is made from sand, stuff that you find on the beach. It's a commodity business. But what they've done is figured out, in large part at the request by Apple Computer to change their business, they figured out how to make translucent glass a screen. Now, most screens are kind of translucent, but they have to fit in these really hard shells. The computers always have a solid back. In some of the really cool TV shows, you're starting to see a clear computer, where you can see through it. That's what these guys have got. Any place that you've got glass, you can now have a point of information, more importantly, a point of decision. Corning has fundamentally changed its importance to the world by moving from a commodity supplier to a deliverer of decision points. So as retailers, you can use Corning's technology or somebody else's or High-Touch's to turn different parts of your store into teaching places, into experiences, into places where they can share their experience with their friends in real time. It's all very, very cool. And Corning had to change its view of itself. It had to work with its financiers, work with its shareholders, work internally, project management, frontline employees, to get people to see their company as something different than we turn sand into glass. Here's another store of the future idea from Belk, a retailer, different model than you guys have. Thought you'll find some of the techniques in here very interesting. This is all doable today. At an individual store level, it will freak you out in terms of the cost, the complexity, and the change it'll wreak on your business. As an industry, I encourage you to use APRO to figure out some of this stuff with you and for you. You've got High-Tech, this interactive digital communications company. I don't know them yet, but I know they're big in your industry. Leverage them to develop ideas that you can customize store by store. Here's the deal. In the United States, about 1 trillion hours a year go to watching television. What if we could take a small portion of that and devote it to teaching kids languages, or helping people to build a new home, or fix the city infrastructure? 1 trillion hours at our disposal. We've got this abundance. Each of you has an abundance in your own business of time and resource, people and experience. If you collect it all together, you'll be able to create some of this stuff that you can all share. So the technology and the platform go in, it's standard for everyone, but the messages that you deliver, your competitive advantage, your differentiation can all be different. So here's some things that you can do in the medium term. Experiment telling the buyer's story. When I was in the stores, people were selling me stuff. Who likes to be sold to? No hands. Everybody likes to buy. When you go shopping, you like to be in control. You like to have things presented in a way that's comfortable for you. You want to buy. So I want to hear more buyer's story stuff. I want to see more pictures on the walls of my kids using a computer with a report card that has an A on it, because that shows the outcome of why I would rent a computer or lease a computer for my kids. That's the betterment. I'm getting out of first generation here as an immigrant, and I'm moving up, just like my parents did in Eastern Europe. Spread the learning opportunities. I think you should use APRO to co-op some of the things you need to learn. To do everything that your industry needs in one of your businesses, well, it may sink you. It's a huge amount of work and change. But if one large franchisor takes on the mobile and another one takes on social local mobile and another one takes on training, and then you pool some of this stuff together. Now, I know you can't share everything, but you've got unlimited resources if you can find some ways to co-op and share. So spread the learning, assign learnings to different groups. There's no charge to learn. Everybody reports back. That's how all the open source code works, and it's the fastest growing stuff in the world. The guy that invented Linux has basically, for nothing, built an industry that's worth like $40 billion a year in Linux software. Engage your employees. You heard about that from Jim Knight. Use experience, service, business design. And the last point, anticipate your customers' needs. Think really hard about what it is that they want and see if you can deliver it to them with less effort, less request, and a little bit faster. Knowing sooner is going to equate to better experience and lower profit. And with that, I'd like to thank you all very much. I think Bill's going to come back up. Thanks. Thanks. Thanks.
Well, I think we have seen the future here today. I hope we all take note of this and apply it to our own lifestyles, our own businesses.